A good life is a life built around fulfilling work, play, relationships, and lifelong learning. Welcome to Good Life Conversations, where we explore the stories and strategies of inspiring everyday people who are striving to create a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. Hi there, welcome to this Good Life Conversation. My name is Jay. I'm your host and the founder of Discover Year. And today's guest is Brett Dean. Brett is a firefighting captain in the City of Markham. And he's also a real estate agent as of recently. So welcome, Brett.
Thanks for having me.
Brett and I know each other a long time now. We went to university together. We played hockey in university, in fact, together. And so we know each other really well. We've stayed in touch since. And one of the reasons that I've invited Brett over the years to meet with our students at Discover Year is because he has a really interesting story from my perspective, which was we knew each other in university and Brett was studying business at a prestigious business school at Queen's University. And I remember even then that he would say, I want to be a firefighter. And I didn't understand. I was confused. I kind of wondered why he was there doing business. And he can tell you a little bit about that. But I found it really interesting that he went through a 5 years, in fact, for him, difficult degree, a lot of work. And he ended up doing something that a lot of people would consider totally different, or people might say that his university was unnecessary to get the job that he has now. So I thought that was really interesting, but the excitement that he had about his current career then, and that he carries forward now, I think is really inspiring. And then he does a lot of other interesting things too, including now becoming a real estate agent. So he's a great example of someone who appreciated education for education's sake. And he can tell you a little bit about maybe how he uses a degree in business. So it's exciting to have you here, Brett. And I'd love to dive in with the same question we start with everybody, and to give our students a sense of kind of what your life looks like. Can you tell us about your daily routine? Understanding as a firefighter, it's quite different. So you can tell us about that. But what time do you get up? Do you have a morning routine? What's your work day like? Do you do any hobbies after work? What's your wind down routine in the evening? What time do you go to bed? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So my routine's pretty unique, I guess. When I do go into work, we work a 24-hour shift. So we pretty much start work at 6:30 a.m. and we leave the next day at 6:30 a.m. So we aren't able to get into a typical daily routine due to that. We typically work, depending on the schedule, about 2 days a week. So my daily routine on a day off, I still get up very early. I probably get up usually around 5 a.m., sometimes 5:30 a.m. Coffee, read the news. As Jay mentioned, I started kind of in the real estate business recently. So I usually go over any new listings that have come out in areas of interest or that I think could interest potential clients. And just kind of relax in the morning. That's kind of my favorite time of the day, nice and quiet. Usually the wife's still sleeping and just have an hour or two to myself. Then, I'm a pretty active person. One of my hobbies is obviously exercising. I like to go to the gym. So I usually try to get that done in the morning, pre-lunch, and kind of leave the afternoon for whatever comes my way, whether it's chores, things I have to pick up, work around the house, whatever. On days off, usually evenings, I try to socialize. I have a pretty active social group and schedule. So I try to spend a lot of time with friends and family. So I usually try to stay pretty busy like that on days off. In terms of a work routine, again, up pretty early, usually up and out the door shortly after 5 a.m. Once I arrive at work, I'm in charge of the house, so the fire hall. I make sure all my guys are in, all my guys are prepared, make sure that they're checking all their equipment, everything that we have in station is ready to go. I'll get in contact with my chief, figure out if he needs anything from us specifically that day, see what's on our schedule. And then from there, our day can really go a number of different ways, depending on what kind of calls come through, depending what's on the schedule. The basic framework I always try to hold for the guys is usually morning between about 9 and 12 is we're always going to use that for some type of training. Usually after lunch, we're going to use that for things that would be scheduled like school programs, public visits. Maybe we have to go to, have face-to-face meetings with the chiefs, things like that. We usually use the afternoon for that. Things like working out. We try to stay pretty fit, especially my crew has a lot of young athletic people. So we usually use kind of the afternoon for that. Then we do a big dinner together. We all make dinner together. We go shopping, make that, have some downtime there. And then usually the night, depending on what comes, I try to leave for downtime for people. You watch a hockey game, watch a movie, relax, and then if we're lucky enough, we get to go to bed. So if it's really busy, then, we don't get too much sleep. So it really depends, but not too much routine in the day, even though it seems fairly structured from how I presented it. But that's kind of my daily day off routine versus work routine.
Wow. And so it sounds like you still get up at the same time, even on the days, even though you work, you need to get up at that time for work twice a week on average, but the 5 other days you still get up. Is that because you like it, or is that because you're training yourself, or why do you still get up at the same time?
Really, I think that my body just kind of started to adapt to that. And then as a result, I've actually learned to really enjoy that. I'm very productive at that time. And again, like I sort of said, it's one of my favorite times in the day. So if I kind of get, awoken and it's 4:30 a.m., I'll just get right up and out of bed and I'll kind of start my process. But yeah, I think my body sort of adapted to getting up at that time. And now as a result, I'm just trying to be, productive with that time. So.
Yeah, one of the things that sometimes comes up in these conversations is people over time, these mentors will say, "This is how I do it now," and I often would never have guessed that I would have liked this when I was 18, right? So a lot of our students, if they had the choice, might get out of bed at 10 or noon, just like you or I often did when we were that age. But I also was kind of forced into getting up early because of kids, and I similarly really like that time now. So it's a good message to just be open-minded to, you might not think that you'll like a certain pattern or ritual now, but that could change and often does. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I learned that too, because I never thought I was the guy that was going to enjoy getting up at 5 a.m., but now I love it. And, my wife is a complete opposite. She'll stay in bed till 9 a.m. if possible. So sometimes, you change your schedule. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Very cool. And it sounds like for you, the 24-hour shift, I know that's a fairly recent thing for a lot of fire halls. And so you have what you might like to get done in a day, and then obviously there might be fires. So how do you, as a firefighter and as a person, how do you adapt to this? Okay, we have a plan for today, and then you get 7 calls or whatever it is, and you can't do that. How do you adapt in that environment, like you said, because it could change every day?
Yeah, it can be quite difficult, especially in my position as a captain, because a lot of my position, it has to do with the planning side of things, and having these things set up. So you just have to be able to adjust, push things off when you have to. Anytime we have something scheduled with people, and they generally know when they're dealing with the fire department that things are going to come up. But I'll just remind people, just say we have meetings or we have people to come in and visit, that there's a chance that we're going to have to go in a hurry, or there's a chance we won't be there. So usually people are very easygoing with that side of it. And then, you push things off and you try to get to it. There's things we have to do, but we're going to get them done when we can do them. Because ultimately, as soon as the tones go off, that's now what our priority is, and that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, just kind of adjust on the fly, and every day is different, so you kind of get used to the chaos a bit.
And what about, so the idea of being a captain, a fire captain, and I'm thinking about this education that you spent so much time in, and in addition to the education at Queen's, right, you also had to do a firefighter college, which we didn't talk about, but I'm thinking about the education that you had at Queen's, and perhaps some of the organizational and communication skills you might have developed or enhanced there. And now I'm thinking about dealing with all these people who might expect you to come and you don't come, and the communications that need to happen. So that's kind of a foray into, like, how do you benefit from the skills and knowledge you learned studying business as a fire captain? Do you see an obvious kind of overlap there?
Yeah, I really do. Like a lot of what I learned at Queen's wasn't necessarily just in subject matter, but it was also in how to cope with situations, how to manage my time, which is one of the biggest things I think I really improved on while I was at Queen's. So a lot of those life skills that, university and the program taught me is very applicable now in this position. Again, time management is a major thing. When things get thrown off, for example, on a day-to-day in the fire hall, those are things that have to be rescheduled. We're going to have to find time for. We're going to have to fit them in somewhere. And it's very similar to what a lot of your students may be going through when they're going through school. They have a heavy course load. They have 4, 5, 6 courses. They're trying to manage that time. They're trying to fit things in. And that's very applicable now in my job. So even though the subject matter, my education doesn't seem to necessarily apply to my career, a lot of what I learned and a lot of my strengths as a result of Queens are completely applicable. So
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's an interesting message because a lot of younger people and even sometimes parents and older people struggle to see the value of doing education when there's not a direct link between that education and the future potential career. So I like to emphasize stories like this because I think it's very true.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, you mentioned working out as a hobby. We like to ask about people's hobbies. This is a good life conversation, so we like to explore all different facets of life. And you mentioned working out. What are some of the other hobbies that you enjoy?
Yeah, so I've always been quite into fitness. So I've always stuck with that, throughout, since my early teens really until now. And I'm quite active in the gym and with, jogging, cardio, etc. I love golf. Jay's beat me up on the golf course once or twice in our day, so I still love golfing. I still play hockey. I've been playing baseball. I got back into baseball a few years ago. I really just like all sports. I just like the team atmosphere, hanging out with some friends, some like-minded people, and getting some exercise in the meantime. So those are kind of what I do in terms of staying active. One of my main hobbies, I would say, or things that's most important to me is a lot of my like social relationships, a lot of my friendships. So again, I'm very active in my social life. I make sure that I spend time with people. I like going out for dinner and drinks. I like, going to their events, whether it's my friends' kids playing a hockey game or whatever the case is. I just try to stay pretty active and spending some time with people that are close to me. So, those are probably the main things I do to spend time when I'm outside of work.
You're now the, I think, third or fourth mentor in this series of interviews that we've done that has mentioned relationships or talking to friends and family as a hobby, which I think is really interesting. And it's probably not something that people would name as a hobby when we're listing our hobbies traditionally. But I think it's really interesting that that when we talk about this, people do see it as a hobby. And for you, I guess, where does that come from? Has that always been the way, and why is that so important to you?
I think sort of this came to me maybe later, a little bit later in life. I didn't see it necessarily as a hobby earlier, but as you get older, you get busier. Your time constraints kick in, and you really kind of yearn for that kind of social relationship, and you really enjoy that, and you actively make time for it. I see it kind of as a hobby because that's something that I make sure I do because I really enjoy doing it. So yeah, it's a good question, but I definitely sort of transitioned from thinking that was just how things normally are to something that I actively have to pursue because I want to. And so yeah, I definitely would describe it as a hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've seen definitely that you invest a lot of time and energy in it. That's something that's visible probably to all people around you. So I think it's interesting that you, as many as others have said, hey, this is something, if you care about it, you need to be proactive as you get older, more so than when you're in organized situations where your friends are kind of all there and hanging out, whether it's school or clubs, etc. So it's an important note as people lean into adulthood that it's something that they'll want to be mindful of to make time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay, thanks. Another question that we always like to explore is the idea of failure. So if you can, tell us about a recent or important failure to you, and what did you learn from it?
Okay, that's a good question. I was actually thinking on that a little bit. So I'm going to kind of maybe not a recent failure, but something I look back on and see sort of as a failure now. When I got into my career, it was about 15 years ago. I had a lot of opportunities to do things within the department, but outside of my job description, whether it was joining our union, for example, whether it was joining committees, whether it was being more active in some of the social events that were organized. I really didn't put any time in or jump on those opportunities at all. I was very focused at the time, I think, on learning and progressing in my specific job and the specific job title versus branching out and taking some of those opportunities. So I look back now, halfway through my career, and I see that as a bit of a failure. There was a lot of things I could have done. There was a lot of personal growth I could have realized if I had taken those opportunities. And again, I just kind of got a bit narrow-minded for a few years there, and I think that was a bit of a failure. Looking back now with 2020 hindsight.
Hmm. And what do you think it was that kind of was the barrier for you to take advantage of those opportunities?
Um, I'd say like I probably personally put up the barrier myself. I think I just got really focused on trying to be exceptional in one category of what I was doing. And I didn't really look at some of these other avenues that could have helped me, not only in my career, but helped me personally and also been enjoyable. So I think it was kind of self-inflicted, really, just kind of being a little bit too focused on one dynamic of the job instead of other aspects of it. So, looking back now, again with 2020 hindsight, I wish I sort of branched out more and took on a little bit more
Mm.
at that point in my career.
Mm. One thing that we talk quite a bit about in Discovery is the idea of kind of zooming in, get really focused, and dedicating yourself to something that is interesting to you, and really kind of pouring yourself into it, and then this kind of juxtaposition or the balance of also keeping an open mind and being aware of opportunities and kind of considering them. So I think this is a good example of that. And obviously you rebounded from it because you're now a captain. You've been promoted a number of times, and so I guess my question is, what have you done with that lesson that you learned since you become aware of it?
So I guess a few years ago I had some regrets with not joining some things, and as a result, going through my career, like um, I had an opportunity to jump into be the special operations rescue team captain, and I applied immediately for it. I prepared for it. I learned about it. I got the position, and now I've started to build the program along with a few other captains that are in this program as well. And I've had an amazing year as a result. I love it. I have a lot of say in how things work. I'm building this program along with a few other like-minded people, and it's a great opportunity. And this is something I may have missed if I was my old self. So
Mm.
again, when this opportunity came around and I was approached by one of my chiefs about it, I jumped on it right away. And I think that was just being aware that I had kind of let a few opportunities go, and I don't want to continually do that. So.
Yeah. Great. And it's a good message that, sometimes we realize these things, and it's important to remember that usually the opportunity is not completely lost. We might have made mistakes, but there will be other opportunities, and it's just about shifting kind of how we perceive those new things that come up. So very cool. Very cool. Thank you. What's an important lesson that you have learned about relationships?
Okay, so again, just I guess this ties back into talking about a bit of my social life and relationships. Um, I'd say simply, putting in the effort. It doesn't always have to be some big grand gesture or some massive effort. It could be something as small as a timely text, email, a happy birthday. But I think I have some really strong bonds over the years, and I think it's because I do put in the effort, and as a result, they put in the effort back. So the more you put in, I think you'll learn the more you're going to get out of those relationships as well. And I think if you kind of keep that in the back of your head as you're dealing with your friends and your people, your family members, and people you come across, that little extra effort will go a long way.
And what about if a student or anyone watching or listening to this says, okay, well, I really want to be friends with this person, and I've put in a lot of effort, and they don't ever put in the same effort back. Has that ever happened to you? And if so, what did you do with it?
Yeah, I would say definitely. Like a lot of times, maybe some people just aren't that open, to starting a new relationship or putting in the same effort back. And I think that's just the reality of life. Sometimes you're going to connect with some people on certain levels where they're going to want to put in that effort, and so will you. And sometimes you're not going to connect with those people in the same way, and there won't be the same amount of effort that's going to be given at that point. But that's fine. That's why there's different strengths to relationships, and that's why you're closer with certain people and not as close with others. I think that's just part of life, and as long as you treat people well, and they're probably going to treat you back, and you take out from what you can of it, you learn from it, and you give back what you can. I think for the most part, you're going to have pretty healthy relationships. But yeah, you're not always going to be, finding people on the same page as you, or that are going to connect with you, on the same strength as others. So.
Yeah, I think my guess is that in most cases, you're probably the person who makes more effort, just because that's my observation, and I think it's unlikely the case that two people in a relationship will always put in exactly the same amount of effort. So to me, it sounds like for you, you're comfortable with sometimes being the one who makes more effort, and you've kind of come to grips with that, and that's okay with you. And other times, maybe you put in the effort and realize, okay, well, I'll just let it lie because it doesn't seem to be as important to the other person.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think, and also you got to recognize that sometimes other people have a lot of stuff going on. So it may not necessarily be that they don't want to put in the effort. They may just not have the same time to put in the effort. Me, I put in a lot of effort, but I do make the time to do that with certain people. And it's not always a requirement that they have to put the same effort back. I have a lot of extremely close friends who are best friends of mine that I've known for the majority of my life. We don't put in the same effort to our friendship as I do, but that's okay. I don't require that at all times. And I'll put in the effort to make sure that we can still, have a healthy and great relationship and still be able to spend some time together. So, not everything has to be equal, and that doesn't mean that they don't care in the same way, or you can't have a healthy relationship, right?
Yeah, beautiful. I totally agree, and it's important for people, I think, to understand that if you're putting in the effort because it feels good to you, and it's less about thinking, is this person reciprocating, and more about, does this feel good? Am I, is this meaningful to me? It's a good way to look at it.
Definitely.
What's an important lesson you've learned about work?
Okay. So I think in my job, but I think this is probably pretty common in other jobs, is I'd say complacency kills progress. It's very easy to get comfortable where you're at. If you become complacent, you become very comfortable. A lot of times, that's not going to help you grow. In my job, especially as a firefighter, for people who may not want to move through the ranks and become a captain or a chief, it's very easy to kind of put your feet up for many years and not really move forward. And I think in a lot of other industries that it will really kill opportunities that could come your way, and it will really hurt your progress. So again, I've had to catch myself at times where I was pretty comfortable and, maybe didn't want to put in that extra effort to move forward. But I was very aware of that. I didn't really let myself become complacent. And as a result, I think I've had a very successful career as a result. So being aware of that, I think, is something that I think could be very beneficial to anybody going through any career in any industry.
Mm. And for you, the idea of kind of like maintaining the focus on growth, how do you do that? Do you have an agenda? Do you have like a check-in for yourself every 3 months to say, hey, what's my progress? Or is it something that's just kind of on your mind and, sitting in the back corner somewhere? Like, how do you kind of keep yourself on pace there to keep progressing?
I think a little bit of both, actually. I think, there's something that I remember at one point in my career, it's probably about 5 years in, where, I just sort of felt like, I'm not really improving at this point. I didn't have very proactive captains that would push certain training or push you down different avenues. And so I kind of caught myself and decided to start to push myself on my own. And that's why I went into the captain's process and stuff like that. But also, I think, let's say during COVID, for example, I realized I was going to have a lot of downtime. So I was very aware that I want to use that in a positive and progressive manner. So that's when I decided to go back to college during COVID and do my real estate courses. I want to do something that's going to be beneficial to my family, something I was interested in as well. I've always been a bit of a real estate junkie, so it was always something that I was following and interested in. And again, I wanted to sort of progress during that downtime when there wasn't a whole lot to do and I had the time on my hands. So I think it was just kind of being aware of, using my time wisely and using my time in a positive manner.
Mm. Yeah, I'd love to touch on this idea of you doing your real estate. I know you've done other things on the side, some construction and handiwork, and because of this kind of traditional schedule for firefighters, where it's a bit of a unique situation where you might only work a couple of days or a few days a week. So, and that of course prompts people to be interested in these fields sometimes, right? To say, oh, you only work 2 days a week, sign me up, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to the person? Because I know for you, it's very clear to me that that's not why you got into firefighting, because I've known you for long enough to know that it was really that you were really excited about helping people, and the adventure of firefighting with all the things was, Brett Dean. Like it just aligned really well. So for the people though that might be thinking, it's only 2 days a week, I could be a real estate agent. Like, what would you say to those people?
Well, I'd say that what the career does offer with a schedule like that is it gives you a lot of flexibility, which is great to pursue other passions or pursue other things. Is that why I got into it? Not at all. When I got into it, we didn't have the schedule. Actually, we had a very normal schedule where we were predominantly working near a 5-day work week. I got into it for all the other reasons, like wanting to help people and being an active person. but the schedule does offer you a lot of time to be able to, again, choose what you want to do with that time. So again, as you did mention, Jay, I did contracting for a long time. We built some houses with a couple friends. I've gone to real estate now. With a new baby pending on the way, I'm going to plan to take a lot of time to be a bit of a stay-at-home father. So it gives you those options to really do those things, pursue those passions, take care of your family or things you need to do because you do have that time. A lot of people with a 9-to-5 job with kids, for example, their time is extremely valuable. And, it's very difficult to be able to pursue some of these hobbies and passions. So that's something that is very interesting about my career and a massive perk for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like that because it's complex, and that's an important part of these conversations, so that you are drawn to the field, and at the same time it's convenient, and you enjoy the fact that there is time, but you didn't join it just because you have all the free time. You didn't join it just because you loved it, even though you did, but you also saw, oh, that's a nice little added benefit that I might have a little bit more free time than the average person. And I think that's good for people to hear, that it's often not just one or the other. It's often a bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you like and dislike the most about being a firefighter?
Okay, so I love my job. I'm 15 years into it, and I still absolutely love it. I did when I was younger, probably the age of most of the students when I was 17, 18-ish, 19. I had some office jobs, and I realized that didn't really make me tick. It didn't really, that wasn't really the style of how I wanted to work or have a career like that. So, I love the fact that there's always something new. You never really have the same day twice. You don't really know what's coming. So there's always a level of excitement with that. So that's something I appreciate. I always grew up playing sports, predominantly team sports, and firefighting in my career it's basically a team sport, right? It's a team job, it's a team career. You do nothing on your own. You do everything with at least a partner, if not multiple crews. So you become very close with the people you work with. You have your shared goals, just like a sports team would have. You train together, you work together, you accomplish things together, you fail together. So it's a very team-oriented atmosphere, and that's something that I always loved growing up. So I made sure I found a career that kind of had that. So also our job's extremely rewarding, right? Like our entire job is just to help people in need. We're helping people often when they're having one of the worst days of their lives. So it's very rewarding because they're very thankful for that. We have a ton of people that come back in the station to thank us for our help. And it could be from something extremely minor, like helping with, a leaky tap in an elderly person's home, versus a house fire where we might have pulled out, their dog or their wife. So very rewarding job, obviously. So that's, an invaluable reason I do love the job. And again, as we just touched on, the unique schedule, it really, which came about later in my career, only a few years ago, but it really allows us to pursue other interests and passions. So, those are the things I love. Some things I don't love. So speaking of the schedule, our schedule is quite opposite to a lot of people in the real world. So we lose a lot of weekends to work. So you do miss a lot of things. New parents in my career, they miss a lot of their kids' events. We work 2 of the 4 weekends every month. So you miss things like that. And that can be hard on families. So that's a bit of a drawback. Even though the schedule is great for certain things, there's a drawback to that schedule. We work a lot of holidays. I have to work Christmas, we work, Thanksgiving. And so again, you do miss a lot of those things. Other things, you see some very difficult things. You see some horrendous things. So that can be very tough on people. We've had a big push in the recent years to start to realize post-traumatic stress disorder, which is very abundant in jobs like mine. So there are a lot of mental health problems that come with the job at times for certain people. Again, very dangerous job as well. So as you start to get older, maybe you slow down a little bit, there's a lot of dangers to that job. And, you always got to keep that in the forefront of your mind. Another difficult part of the job is our sleep habits, right? Sleep is a major thing for people's health, and our sleep habits are, almost non-existent. I can go into work and, I could go 3 shifts in a row where I don't sleep a minute and we're up 24 hours straight. Then you got to come home and try to sleep the next day if you're not too busy with other things. And now you're sleeping some days, you're sleeping some nights, and it's shift work, and it can really throw off your schedule. And studies over the years have shown that it can be pretty hard on your health. So that'd be a drawback. I think those are the main ones. I can't think of too many other things. Overall, though, I know it sounds like some terrible aspects to the job, and they are drawbacks, but I absolutely love the job, and the benefits far, far, far away, I think, the drawbacks.
It's great. Yeah, I love it. Again, the complexity of drawing up the pros and cons is hopefully useful to people. And I would imagine that for a lot of people who go into firefighting, it would be difficult to kind of understand the impacts of all these things on you as a person until you try. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And there are some people that get into it and then they do leave the career because they realize they're not really built for that or not ready for that, or it's not something that they really foresaw when they were getting into it. So yeah, it's something that is quite tough, difficult on people for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I would love to wrap up with the question we always end with, and the pretext for the question is that we've kind of transitioned into this talk around good life conversations over the years at Discovery. We started just talking about careers, and we realized that students were very interested, rightly so, in understanding, all the elements to leading a good life, a fulfilling, meaningful life that's rich with ongoing learning and good relationships, and, a sense of a well-being and a pursuit of things that are interesting to us. And at the same time, young people today are looking out into a world largely through screens that's showing them an inaccurate depiction of what life looks like for so many people. So what advice would you generally offer, having been through all the things you've been through over your career and your life? What advice would you offer to our students and anyone listening to help them keep pace and keep pursuing a good life?
That's a great question, and that's a complex question. I could probably go on for hours about that. I'm sure most of your guests could. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, especially at their age, social media and all that we didn't really have when we were, we were going through the period that they're going through. I think it is a whole added pressure that they have to deal with that we never really did. What I would say is, nobody has it figured out. It doesn't matter whether I'm 42 years old. I don't have it figured out yet. I'm figuring it out on a daily. There's always new things coming my way, new opportunities. I just went back to school late. I was 38 years old. I went back to school. You never quite have it figured out. You're always growing as a person, and that's the reality of life. Never mind at your age, where you're just starting to get into your adult life. You're starting to have opportunities come your way. You're starting to get passionate about certain interests. This isn't a time where you're supposed to have it figured out. This is a time where you're supposed to explore. You're supposed to take on those opportunities, and you're supposed to enjoy this time. It's going to be a lot of hard work. There's going to be a lot of stresses, but you'll look back and you'll realize that this was one of the most enjoyable times of your life. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're, stressed out or going through, school or thinking you have to have some straight direction. There's nothing's linear in this life, and you don't have to have that straight direction. What I would say, though, and something that I've learned through the way, is try to experience as many of those opportunities as you can as they come at you. You're going to have a lot of opportunities at this age, in fields that you might think don't interest you, in fields that do interest you. Take those opportunities, though, because the more experiences you have, the better idea you're going to have of what you love, what you're passionate about, and what you're good at, because you want to really put those three things together while you're trying to find your career. But don't think you have to have anything figured out at this point. Success will come. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? It takes many years to start to gain that success, and not only success in a career, but success in your relationships, success in your family life. So don't be in a hurry to get there. Take what comes, take when it comes, enjoy those opportunities. Don't take anything too seriously, and live a balanced life. You're going to be working hard in school, you're going to be working hard at your part-time jobs, you're going to be working hard getting into your career. But work hard in your social life, work hard in your family life, have fun, relax, travel. I think the most successful people I know, I can look back on and say they're also some of the most balanced people I know. And so I keep that in my mind when I'm going through my life and I have these opportunities coming out at me. I try to stay balanced and try to live that balance.
Right. A lot of Discovery is, I think, what you're saying. And what I'm pulling from this is some ideas that I think are standouts to me is, again, the idea that relationships take work, and in fact, as you grow up, it takes perhaps even more work than you're used to. So, but it's worth the investment, as we know. And this idea that you will have the opportunity perhaps to pursue multiple things that you're excited or interested in that could become passions, and it's important to pursue those things and also keep a part of your brain open to new things that you might not expect, because those can really lead to some really interesting places as well. So thanks, Brett. We've known each other a long time. It's interesting, though, to have a conversation that's a little bit more formal and nothing new and surprising to me, but a lot of stuff I think that will land with our students. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, great. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy doing this, and I hope students did take something from this. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. This has been Good Life Conversations. We look forward to seeing you at the next one.